This episode is brought to you by Alpine Hardwood Flooring. They've been our partner now for over a decade, installing all our wood floors on all our new homes as well as our remodels. And on a personal level, Adam and Anthony Jankala, the owners, are just absolutely amazing people. They've been so supportive of my career as well as doing anything we need to make sure that our clients are happy. And they work so well with our other vendors and trade partners at not only protecting their product, but also ensuring everyone else's looks great. So if you're looking for a wood floor or for a refinish, I highly recommend Alpine Hardwood Flooring. Find them at alpinehardwoodmn.com or alpinehardwoodmn on Instagram.
I take an approach to business with what is the edge, right? What edge can I provide that is different? Is it customer service? Is it me? Is it our offering? Is it how we go to market? All of those nuances. And they've changed and they've evolved over the years, and they're different now and they'll be different later.
Thank you for everyone for coming to the Curious Builder Live podcast number 2. We had one earlier this summer, so some of you are familiar, most of you are new, so thank you very much for coming out tonight. Tonight, obviously, we're joined with Alex Lelchuk, and my co-host is Jordan Diorio. Before we get started, I just want to do a few thank yous. One is to the Lowlands space here, so thank you very much for yourself and ownership here for letting us use the venue. It's an amazing place. It's only been open for 4 or 5 months, is that right?
Since March.
Okay, so since March. So please tell your family and friends, it's a great place to have events, weddings, anything you want. This place obviously is great. I'd like to thank a few of our sponsors for the event tonight specifically. One is Promotion Select. We have some swag over there for purchase if you want hats, bottles, anything else. They also can do things for your company. We're also being sponsored by Luchetta, a lighting company that Alex works with as well. They're part of the drink sponsorship, so I know we'll get a hearty round of applause for them. That's kind of like low-hanging fruit when you're the drink sponsor. I'd like to thank, we have Andy Kassan here, as well as Courtney Minton. Where are you guys? We got one in the back and right up here. Thank you for Builder Trend and CBUSA for helping us sponsor the event and for the food. The food is from Chow Girls. If you haven't had it, it'll be open all night, as well as the bar, so please feel free to kind of exit during the interview if you feel like you need something to eat or something to drink. Who else are we missing? I think that's it for the sponsors. Oh, one last thing. Where's Mark Ostrom? Oh, there he is. Can you stand up, Mark? So, bingo. That's right. Podcast 34 last week. All right. Who's listened to his podcast? Has anyone in here listened to the podcast? All right. So Mark has a nonprofit called the Joy Collaborative. Please tune into that. His Joy-mobile is outside. There's 44,000 kids in need in the state of Minnesota alone, ranging from any kind of disability that you can imagine, but the sensory mobile, if you will, is essentially a way of letting kids reset. Let's say you're at a birthday party, a dentist, a corporate event, wherever you have it. Even as an adult, if you haven't been in there, I just went there with Ben and Drew. It's very calming. You could probably rent it out before any public event. Be great at wedding venues for brides. It really calm the nerves down. Yeah, so anyway, please check out what they do, amazing work in their nonprofit. It's pretty inspiring work. So I think anything else? Oh, we have the Riffing Trio on the music. My brother-in-law Nelson and his group. They're very talented musicians for hire. So any sort of party or event that you have, they were at our Artisan Home Tour this year as well, and it definitely classes it up. So I guess we'll get started. The way the night is going to go is obviously we're going to do our podcast interview with Alex here for about an hour. We'll focus on the first part on Lelch audiovisual, and kind of the second half will be about the Lowlands, the wedding venue business we're in now. And then we'll do 20 minutes of Q&A. So if you have any questions, write it down on your phone or remember it. And then we'll pass a mic around. And then obviously the rest of the evening, feel free to eat food and drink after that.
Bathrooms are behind the bar.
As well as downstairs. So, all right, without further ado, welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host, along with...
And I'm your co-host. Woo! Jordan. Special co-host.
Special co-host.
Yes.
I had to bring some star power for number 2, otherwise nobody would show up.
Yes,
obviously we have
you.
Alex Lelchuk from Lelch Video.
Hello.
All right, well, why don't you get us started a little bit, soften up this crowd with some dad jokes. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey? You have an amazing, really, story even coming to the United States. It really impacted me when we talked about it. But just tell us a little bit about your journey to where you're at now, and we'll kind of dive in from there.
Yeah, so kind of all started with kind of an immigration component. My parents immigrated here from Belarus, which was Russia at the time, but is now Belarus, as everybody knows it. And it was a time where like it wasn't great for them. Chernobyl had just happened, and there was things that were being said that weren't true. My mom was out with me, and I was 1.5 years old. Chernobyl had happened. There was a rain, and started to get a little bald spot on my head because I had a bunch of hair, and so the doctor, my grandma was a nurse practitioner, one of the head nurses there, and the doctor was like, on the record, you have malnutrition, but off the record, obviously it's poisoning, and so that was sort of like the final straw for my parents. You weren't allowed to leave Russia at the time, like that. You weren't just like, oh well, we're just going to move to a different country. But we, were Jewish, and so we were able to utilize sort of a refugee sort of status to leave the country. And so you kind of gave everything up. You were allowed to leave with like $90. And whatever you can bring with you, hop on a train, roll out of the country, and then you kind of went into this process of trying to get accepted by a country, and so each country had like a different list.
I mean, can you see my mouth is gaping? I mean, Chernobyl. That's
little Chernobyl
I mean,
happened, yeah.
I mean, talk about perspective. I mean, your parents left because you were being poisoned. I mean, it's something we read about in the history books. Your family actually lived.
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
early 80s?
I was born in 85.
Okay.
I think that happened in 86, 87.
Okay.
Yeah. So kind of, journey through that. We were stuck in Italy during the winter for like 6 months, and then finally were able to make it to get over to the United States, went to New York, and then finally moved to Minnesota.
Minnesota. So why Minnesota, out of curiosity? I mean, I love Minnesota, don't get
Top
me wrong.
destination,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
From Russia to Minnesota, a dream.
My parents were not digging kind of the New York vibe and the hustle and bustle, and again, I think it comes back to kind of kids and schools. At that time had gates and fencing, and it just wasn't the vibe that my parents were ultimately looking for, and we had some family here too, so kind of went, and we had family in New York as well, which is why we went there originally.
And how many siblings did you have at the time when you were traveling? Because you were, what, 1.5, 2.5, 3?
I'm three.
You're three at this time?
At this time, yeah. So it was just my parents, myself, my grandparents, and my dad's sister. Okay. So no siblings. I have a little brother. He's 10 years younger than me. My parents had to kind of rebuild their whole lives up in order to be like, all right, we can have another kid now.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing because I think for myself, I sometimes wonder what to do. I was talking to Mark Ostrom actually about this a little bit with the kids in need actually. And, you read about stuff in the paper. I never know personally what to do with some of these stories. Like, as I, go to the club or I eat my breakfast burrito or whatever. And you realize you have so many privileges. And then you hear a story. I didn't know that part of your story. I knew some of the other parts. And it's just kind of eye-opening of just how thankful we are. And I mean, I guess part of this is the American dream, which will tie into business, and that exists everywhere. But I love hearing stories where people are coming and creating something that they couldn't get somewhere else. And I feel like you embody a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a part of probably what is kind of baked into the drive to go down the path of entrepreneurship and starting businesses and just the drive to succeed and make that effort and energy that was spent in order to create a better opportunity and check that box. Yes, that did evolve, that did happen.
Mark, we're about to say the same thing. So what I'm curious about, Curious Builder, I mean, we should have a buzzer anytime someone says, what am I curious about?
We
drink,
do
right?
need one of those, or drink, yeah.
What have you learned from your parents? What characteristics do you take pride in that you've learned from your parents that have made you into the business leader that you are today?
I think even just from, the story that I just told, I think it's just it's the drive and to not give up, right? I think as a business owner, there are lots and lots of things every single day, or if not every day, at least weekly, that are super, super difficult and are why would I do this right now? Why would I keep going through this? Why not just like
Yes.
give up and go do something else?
Yes, we laugh because it's daily, right, Mark? It's daily. Weekly is generous, right?
Yeah.
It feels daily.
It's funny because I think one of the ideas, and we'll talk about this a little bit later about creating a second business. I think as an entrepreneur, you keep on coming up, if anything, you come up with 4 or 5 businesses a week, and then you have to convince yourself of reasons why you shouldn't start them. And
Right. Yeah.
so clearly we haven't done a good job with that because we did at least 2. So walk us through a little bit of that, I guess, scrappy mentality. So as you're growing up in Minnesota, I think you went to the University of St. Thomas, is that correct?
Yeah, so I moved to California after high school and kind of, did that a little bit, like needed to move away and go on that adventure, did some school out there, and ultimately started to dabble with kind of what Lelch ultimately became. This is where that sort of the story of mounting a TV for the first time after the dorms and being like, all right, there's probably not a lot of people that know how to do this, but this is easy enough to do, and then sort of wrapping that into like a business idea, and then ultimately moving back to Minnesota, finishing school at St. Thomas. Kind of comes back to that thing of like drive. Like I didn't need that degree. Like that isn't ultimately what I'm using today. But it's helpful and it is a part of that, like completing it, right, and finishing it, and something that like I can't not do.
And I love that like you were mounting a TV and you're like, how can I do this better, as opposed to like destroying your wall or just throwing the TV out. Like that's amazing that you
Right.
thought
Yeah,
like
got lucky,
in
it
that
didn't fall out.
moment,
Yeah.
right? Because you didn't think you were going to go into audio. You were just mounting a TV and you're
Yeah.
like, hey, there could be a better way to do this. I have destroyed my walls doing that and did not think of creating an audio business.
Right.
So that's
It's called
really
Lelch,
awesome.
you know?
And so I'll hire you. Essentially, that's what you're here for.
Right.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
At what point did you realize that that is what you wanted to do? Like, what other jobs did you have, or what was your career path? Because it's often been said that people are either entrepreneur because they're forced to. You have a drive to do it as well, or maybe you're surrounded by entrepreneurs as well. Did anyone in your family have any sort of businesses?
No. So my parents had to just like dive into it, right? They're 21, 22, and it's just like, what jobs can you get with no experience and no language, and you kind of just work your way up and work your way through it. But I've just always had like the drive and the hustle to do it. So I think as far back as I can remember, I'm gonna start something. It was just like a matter of when. Or what, and it was really, I think, looking for like the right time, and it was like, okay, here's this thing that I just did because I thought it was cool and I wanted to get a TV on the wall because I was like, I'm into technology, and it was a cool thing to do. I was like, all right, that I got from A to Z, and so let's see if other people need A to Z, right? And started to market and to sell that, and that's kind of where it kicked off. Like, I didn't know I was starting a business per se. I didn't have like this master plan that I thought about for 18 months. I just did it.
How were you soliciting business? So at what point did you actually get your articles of incorporation and become legal, or did you just start, hey, how many people do I know that want my help? And you started that way until it was like, okay, wow, I have a lot of people who want my help. I should start a company, and then it kind of went from there.
It's just, selling and marketing is something that I have sort of a natural talent in, and marketing in general, and just kind of thinking about one of the things I've learned with myself over the years is that I'm really good at sort of solving big problems, right? Not super great at like, let's get really into the
That's
detail.
what I do for a living.
Dial it in.
It's
So I
the
have
teeny tiny
amazing,
things no one wants to deal with. So you see the
amazing
big problems,
operations
yeah.
people on my teams to help me with that, be the yin and the yang to that. And so one of those problems is like, how do you get people, and how do you get business, and how do you get things cooking? And so at that particular time, it was utilizing Craigslist because that was super popular at that time, and then Groupon was just starting, right? So this is kind of 2000.
Shout out. I mean, that's like a
2010.
stamp in time.
right.
Craigslist and Groupon.
Right.
That's like a specific window of time.
It
I mean,
was
Craigslist
clutch.
sounds
It was
dangerous.
clutch.
I'm so happy you're alive.
Never know what you're walking
I
into.
was just going to say, oh my
Yeah.
God, I didn't
No
know it
idea
was
what we're
Craigslist. Wow.
We would sell stuff on Craigslist, and my wife would be like, can you be home? I'm like, why? Because she's like, someone's coming over to like get our table. I'm like, what? What's happening right now?
Yeah.
Anyone
Yeah.
can meet you from Craigslist.
Right.
Like there was, anyways,
Yeah.
that's amazing. By the
So
way.
I was that guy for a little bit. Yeah. Blue van. It was scary.
This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 19.5 years, I've been building homes, and 95% of all of my homes have used Pella windows. I couldn't be happier to call them a partner in our builds and our remodels. Whether you're an architect, a designer, or a remodeler, I'd highly recommend Pella Windows. They can fit old homes, new homes, reclaimed, commercial, and really everything in between. Pella is a company that we trust and that we recommend to our clients. Additionally, in management, Peter and Ed have just been absolute fantastic people to work with, as well as mentors to me personally. So when it comes time to look for a window, I'd highly recommend Pella Windows. Find more at pellanorthland.com. Also, if you're interested, you can hear episode 1 where I interview Peter and Ed together for a great listen on business and Pella Windows. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive. Adaptive is an AI technology that we use for all our cash flow management. If you're in construction, you know how difficult this is. The days of importing all your invoices, cost coding them, asking 10 people in your office where they get coded, is this job approved, is this invoice approved, making notes, all of that is now done through AI. Your invoices get automatically uploaded. After that, all you have to do is cross-check its accuracy per the jobs. This is now saving us hours per job per month, because with a click of a button, you can now have the draw process automated, which has been a complete game changer. On top of that, it's going to track your lien waivers as well as your certificates of insurance, making sure that everyone is in compliance before their bills are paid. This is saving us hours and hours per job per month, all with a click of a button. If you want to know more, check out adaptive.build. Additionally, we interviewed Matt Calvano on episode 15 of the Curious Builder Podcast. You can find out more about it on our website as well at thecuriousbuilderpodcast.com.
But it allowed things to get started, right? Because there isn't seed money and there isn't this funding that I'm getting from people to like kick this thing off. And I almost think that that's a better approach, especially now that I've had sort of the alternative view of that. It's just it's a scrappier approach, and you can kind of test and go and test and go, and then you can test more and go faster, and eventually, evolve to having money and being able to invest and grow faster.
What were some of the milestones that you sort of hit in those early years in terms of either things that really demonstrated? I think every business owner can relate to, the scrappy effect of really making it work one way or another. Everyone has a story and we can all share one, but what are some of your early memories of like looking back, you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that to stay in business?
I mean, the Groupon thing was like a stretch, but ultimately like that turned into 50 TV sales, which came along with mounts and all of these like peripheral things that you could bolt on. So that was a big milestone because that took things from like, okay, I got to go run out and do this to I need to hire people. Right. So it truly took it to this next step of being able to actually hire people. I would hire electricians because I didn't know any better. I think another big milestone was figuring out that there's industries and that I was in an industry.
The concept. What is an industry? Oh, right. I'm in one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I didn't work in any industries. I had jobs as a high school kid and was working in restaurants and hustling here and there. But
well, don't you think, though, I'd be kind of curious to pull the room at some point with this question, because I think some of the things that makes a business owner successful is not knowing what's out there, because you don't know anything, so you just simply go do it. Do you think, it seems like that's pretty accurate for
absolutely.
How you tackled it, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think you would start to maybe see things like, ooh, that seems scary, or that's really, a tall hill to climb, or just all these excuses and things that maybe are going to get in your way versus just going, and then when you get there, then you get there and deal with it.
Yeah, they say something like you'll never have your first business again. You only have it once. So It's not like you're naive. You're almost ignorant to those things. So you're more likely to take risks. Versus that was your first business, which I'm curious, once again, ding, 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 I said curious again, when we talk about the Lowlands, how you approach it differently because you've had a first business and because you've had to be so scrappy. So
you're pretty good at dad jokes for a lady.
Thank you. Mom jokes? Can we rebrand it?
We can.
My mom's here. Hey, Mom.
I think that what's interesting about that is because you're not being held back by anything, you're willing to try anything or everything. And a lot of ideas are really bad. I have so many bad things that I've tried, and then 20 years later, you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that. Or I'm always really impressed at people that have a bunch of children that start a business, when their kids are I have young kids now. Starting a business now seems very daunting. I'm double hats off to the people that do that. But as a single 23-year-old that doesn't know anything, A little quick story. My roommate in college sold disability insurance, and he tried to sell me disability insurance. And my joke was, I'm like,
friend.
Ryan, I could only hope to be disabled. I'll move home. My mom will make me huckleberry pancakes. And he's like, I have no rebuttal for that argument. And so, but like, man, your story is so different once you have children or once you'd have nowhere else to go. And so, anyway, I think sometimes being fearless there is a part of that can be really healthy for the launch of a career.
Yeah, timing is everything, and having the freedom to be fearless and not have to worry as much about the risk is really, really critical. Not to say that it couldn't be done at any stage, but it's one more thing that's out of the way.
Over the years, so what year did you start Lelch?
It would have been 12 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 2011, 12, 13, somewhere in there. For those doing math, help me out.
2010, yeah.
Our strong suit.
Yeah, so coming out of a pretty awesome time in building, so a lot of remodel. Like, who were your clients? I mean, obviously you had 50 people on a Groupon, evidently, but other than that, after that,
Or Craigslist.
or Craigslist.
Or Craigslist.
So when did you start working with builders and commercial entities?
So that took a while. So that's sort of the traditional approach within our industry. Is to really sort of target and go after that for really good reason. But I've always taken I take an approach to business with what is the edge, right? Like, what edge can I provide that is different? Is it customer service? Is it me? Is it our offering? Is it how we go to market? All of those nuances, and they've changed and they've evolved over the years, and they're different now, and they'll be different later. But at the time, the edge that I could bring to the marketplace was marketing. So marketing was being done really, really poorly in our industry. Like, it wasn't really being done, and so I could do that at a pretty low entry point, penetrate a pretty substantial portion of the market, and it was a good evolution point for me to be able to grow the business, be able to pace yourself, because I kind of looked at builders as like, you're going to get one shot. Right? So if you're ready for it, then great, go for it. And and that can evolve and blossom into this thing, and that might be the primary thing, and you might want to stop doing Groupons, right? But you have to be ready for that. And when you're sort of starting out and getting things rolling, you're just not, right? And so having, I think, that intuition of just pace yourself, go fast where you can go fast, and pace yourself where you need to pace yourself.
I love that. And I feel like part of growth is people. So I did a little internet sleuthing, which is just basically being a detective.
Stalking.
Yeah, stalking, whatever you want to call it. But I saw you have 30 employees, is that correct?
38, yep.
Oh my God, there's 8 more that aren't on the site. They need headshots, follow-up to do. I'll email you.
Yeah.
That...
We got to keep the stock chase.
I have a to-do list for
Chelsea
you.
is here. Quick, send a text. We can quick get their headshots in before we're over.
To-do lists, that's a lot of people. I think people leading is one of the hardest things you can do as a leader, and I think it's probably the thing that I see my clients struggle with the most. I'd love to hear kind of your approach to leading people, when to know when to hire, when to fire, just how do you lead? Because I know that's such a crucial part to growing a business and one of the hardest parts.
Yeah, I mean, people are everything. At the end of the day, Lelch is the people that are in it. The Lowlands are the people that are in it. That's ultimately where it all comes from, no question about that. I think one of the things that you happen to have a talent with, and it's evolved over the years, is finding amazing people, attracting amazing people, because again, I couldn't do it without them, literally, right? And so, that I think is having really, really good people, and then, growing as an individual of different ways of managing and different ways of leading, and kind of knowing what you're really good at and knowing what you're not really good at, and leaning into the things that you're good at is sort of advice that I give in general to anyone in any segment of their career, but especially as a business owner. And so I think with leading people, I try to empower and let them sort of do what they need to do, and really just kind of focus on the big problems and focus on here's where we're trying to go. Here's the vision of where I think we need to be, right? Here's how we need the customer to feel at this stage. Here's how we need to, do business with our vendors, et cetera. And then, collaboratively try to get ourselves there. It drives people that need lots and lots of direction crazy. But, you fill those voids with other people within the organization that can then take it down to that level and fill some of those gaps.
Yeah, when I was doing my sleuthing /stalking, I even read all of your Google reviews. and your lowest review is a 4 out of 5. Like, that's pretty
brutal,
good. And I mean, that is amazing. I was like waiting for a 1 to show up, and I was like,
That's impressive.
I know, and I was like, is he paying people, or maybe he just has a really good business? But everybody says in the reviews the services and the team. So taking pride and like hiring the right people and delivering a high quality product shows when you stock the business.
Yes. Yeah. Which we hope for. Yeah.
I mean, that's really impressive. How many reviews were there?
There was a couple hundred.
No way.
Right? It's like 100.
That's like 140.
140. Yeah. I mean, you're so, oh my God. I was rounding up.
Keep it tight.
I was rounding up for you.
Yeah.
We should have just said 200. But I was really impressed. That was from a stalker's perspective.
Yeah, so
really impressed.
It's a high focus area for us. Like it's an important component. We're in a difficult business, right? We're in the business of technology, which is imperfect in its nature, and so it can create frustrations and it can create hiccups and it costs quite a bit of money, right? And so people have high expectations of it being perfect. The other challenge with it is, when you buy an iPhone, for example, it's like that is a really confined sandbox. Like everything in that is exact and can't be different. And when we put together a technology system, we're kind of doing like a kit car, right? And so we're doing all these parts and pieces and gluing it together and trying to make it work perfectly, but all of these pieces aren't intended to work perfectly. They're intended to work on their own individual space. And so, I've known that on the onset of it, and the way that I approach that is, look, we can't make a perfect system because we're just not in control of it. We don't manufacture everything. But what we can do is that when there is an issue, we make that process of solving it as seamless as possible. And so for many years, we've made it so that we resolve issues remotely with a variety of methods and methodologies. But a part of that, and a part of what some of those reviews will ultimately say, is that we had a problem, but we had an easy way to contact Lelch, and we had an easy way to resolve that issue, like that day, that night, on Sunday, whatever it is. And that makes people like feel good and feel like they're being taken care of. And it's a rare thing that you can, reach out to somebody on Sunday night.
And it's a
get something
human,
addressed.
and not a robot.
That like knows what's going on and is like probably in your house, was in your house at some point. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty amazing, I think, too, because I guess two questions here. One is, what percentage of your work is commercial versus residential?
So we're like 38% commercial, the rest is residential. And then we also, so there's 3 businesses within Lelch. Never slow down. But so the 3 businesses are residential, commercial, and lighting design. So we do in-house lighting design with a lighting designer. And although all of those businesses sort of have interconnectivity, they really function as individual businesses. There's individual teams and people that are within each of those things. And again, we share some resources, and I love that, right? Like that's an efficient way to operate a business, and it's fun when we're able to do that with Lowlands, and we have as we've kind of ramped the business up. But yeah, it functions as 3 separate ones.
I think you had shared with me last week when we were chatting that 5 years ago, commercial was 0%, and so it's grown 38% in just 5 years.
Yeah.
What do you think has led to that kind of growth? I mean, that's pretty impressive growth.
Yeah, so, opportunity.
Craigslist? Question mark?
We brought Craigslist.
It was a
2.0
Groupon
back.
for some big companies.
Groupon? Foursquare? Does Foursquare exist?
We got pulled into a commercial project. So we're a large automation dealer in our marketplace of a particular brand called Control 4. This was specified into a commercial multifamily project. We've all seen a gazillion apartment buildings pop up. And so it was specified, we got pulled in. And as we got pulled into this commercial project, I was like, all right, this is at a different pace. This is at a different cadence. And it was like, all right, if we're going to go after this and we're going to do this, let's do it right. Let's get the drafters, and we need an engineering team, and we need project managers, and we need kind of all these additional layers. And so we started to sort of really build that team out for these style of projects because we started to get more of them. And then because we had that team, I was like, all right, well then now let's go after the additional sort of interesting layers to us in the commercial space, which is primarily huddle rooms, conference rooms, sound masking systems, tenant improvement type of projects. And so those 2 segments have been our primary focus, and then that's continued to sort of evolve.
It's interesting because, as a residential builder in my other daytime job is when I'm not moonlighting as a podcaster, evidently,
Part-time business is home builder.
Yeah. The spaces between commercial and residential are pretty big leaps. I don't know too many contractors that do both. And so I'm curious, is it not as big of a leap for you to handle commercial and residential? I mean, I see some electricians do it. I mean, there are other industries that seem to be able to do it more easily than, say, a builder. Is that an accurate statement?
I think at about 10% of the business, maybe 8% of the business, it was doable, and it was something that we could kind of sustain and you could make it work. But as it evolved beyond that, it is just too different. There's just a very different pace. You need a lot more project management. Project management's really nice on the residential side. Engineering is really nice on the residential side, and so our residential side gets the benefit of those things because we have those systems in place, dedicated drawings and all of these additional elements. But on the commercial side, you need those things, and so you're just running at a totally different pace. So it is very, very different. It is tough. But I knew that it would be, right? It's back to that entrepreneurial component of like, I want to, explore new things, and I guess a glutton for pain. I don't know, but.
We call it the figure it out factor. I've heard that and it stuck with me. That's what you have.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, from a business standpoint, is commercial construction more profitable than residential? Like, why even go there? You simply saw an opportunity to go there and a need needed to be met, and so you were willing to go there? And the reason I'm bringing it up is, and I'll just preface it this, like, remodeling will tend to be at a higher percentage for a builder than in new home construction. Mm-hmm. And, some builders choose to remodel, some choose to do new home. They are definitely two different businesses for sure. Yeah. But they're obviously close enough that you can play in both spaces. I'm just curious from a profitability standpoint, if that has anything to do with why you would branch out into commercial.
Yeah, show us your books. You're making any money? How much money are you making?
People are here for answers.
Yeah, give me your QuickBooks login. Yeah. I'll log in right now.
Yeah. No, margins are definitely, at its base, margins are definitely higher on the residential side than commercial, right? At its core. However, commercial is a little different. Residential has a lot more sort of aftercare, whereas commercial has less aftercare. So there's a lot, like, you can get to the beginning, the middle, and the end of commercial much more efficiently than you can residential for a variety of reasons. But I think the primary reason for doing it is like it was to diversify. There's a lot of benefits to us being at 38 people than when we were at 14. There's things that are drawbacks too, but there's a lot of business benefits to just how quickly we can scale up now. How staff can be sort of interchangeable in certain areas. And so it's created a lot of opportunity and efficiency for the business.
When you're courting, let's say, different building companies, let's say residential in the space that I play in, you're developing a relationship with us, I think like any business, how often are builders choosing to work with you versus, I know there's architects in the room here, how often are they necessarily speccing some of your products in and that's your way in? Like, what would be your split on your onboarding into a business platform, if you will?
In the beginning, or in the beginning of our sort of like, let's go after sort of like that next piece of the pie, which is the builder, designer, architect community, which again is the primary method for a lot of people within our industry, but was not Lelch's original primary method. And we started going after that. That's very an uphill battle, right? That takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, but it's very beneficial. I think as we've been in the marketplace longer, established a higher relationship, proven that we can, execute high-level projects and have happy people, involved afterwards. There's been a shift where it's a little bit more balanced and you start to have people coming to you and vice versa. Lighting was also a pretty strategic move in that direction. There's a variety of reasons why lighting is a problem or was a problem, or we saw it as a problem specifically. We were getting pulled in to do lighting control systems, but to do a lighting control system, I need an electrical plan, I need a drawing, so that I can figure out how many you need. That was really, really rare. Most of the time there would not be an electrical layout or an electrical plan. And so I was like, all right, that's a problem that we could solve. And then it was always like, will this light not flicker and buzz? And it's like, okay, that's another problem that we can solve. And so the benefit of that is, A, we're solving that problem and we're providing much better lighting solutions and sort of filling this gap where there isn't this ultimate lighting designer, but it's also not just being done by somebody that maybe doesn't fully have some education in the space. But what it's also allowed us to do is move higher up in the chain, right? So we're involved in the project a lot sooner and getting established in the project. And so if we're established as a lighting designer, we've been a part of that really initial design phase. When it comes to the AV, it's like, who else, right? Of course, can you please do it for us? And it's just like the relationships is already established. We don't want to go, form a new relationship. So
It's funny because not only are you a serial entrepreneur, but I feel like one of your businesses has like 8 businesses in it.
I was just gonna say there's really like 4 businesses total, and maybe the Lowlands has 3 businesses within it too. So I feel like we're at 7
yet.
now. Or is the math adding up? I don't know.
It's a lot. 38 seems a little light for all these businesses, actually. Wow.
Can we? I'm being time cop. Can we do a seamless transition to the Lowlands? This is the transition. Sorry, were you going to segue?
I had a good question, but we'll let it go.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just looked and I was like, whoa, we've been talking. So I want to talk about the Lowlands. It's beautiful space.
So
That's the segue.
Speak about, so I guess I had 2 quick, well, it would be about lighting design, and then we'll go into these lights here because I think these are really trippy lights. But so a year and a half ago, I came out to your shop, and you were, and just for those that aren't familiar with lighting design in the room, walk us through just real briefly. I was so impressed with the lighting that follows your circadian rhythm and lighting that's following the path. I think for a big part of my job is educating our clientele or partnering with architects or with designers or lighting designers to kind of really educate them on what this is. But I need high level understanding to kind of like, hey, you're going to spend this kind of money to do this. And a lot of people when I do it are like, But man, you go in there and you're like, wow, yeah, I need a light that follows my mood. This is amazing. And so
Sold.
walk us a little bit through that, and then it'll kind of transition to some of the lighting design here.
yeah.
That's a good transition.
Thank you.
So welcome.
So at its most fundamental core, right, the sun is sort of the natural light that, we have experienced as humans, and that has different levels, right? It's warmer, it's cooler as it gets more into the middle of the day as opposed to where it starts and where it ends. Fire and an incandescent light bulb are pretty good representatives of that. They have different color temperatures within them. They can show that different segment, and our bodies and minds react to that. So that's the circadian rhythm part. When we got LED fixtures, which is great, right? Super, super efficient and last for, 50,000 hours, a lifetime. The thing that we got taken away is that. So we had one set color temperature. We just had like noon, right? And it was noon no matter what happened, right?
Hospital
Whether you dimmed
lighting
it.
is what it feels like. I'm in a hospital all the time.
Right.
Or Target, which is stressful.
And so like nobody knew any better, right? They just like dealt with it. And so that is so that's kind of a primary technology that's available that, we promote and is a nice component. Circadian rhythm is essentially tying that together and doing different color temperatures that are matching the sun throughout the day, which is good for wellness, mind, body, etc.
That is fascinating. Sold. Will you come to my apartment after this?
That's what everybody says. That's what everybody says.
Okay.
I think it's going to cost as much as your apartment.
That's okay. Sold.
So my question on people that, this is a fairly new technology, or at least that I'm aware of it, maybe it's really old, but anyway, I guess the point is when you've asked people that have already lived in the home, because I think it's, in some ways, it's a hard sell, and maybe I'm wrong. I'd like to hear how you sell this exactly, because I would like to do it. And then secondly,
Sell us on it. This is a pitch. This is a pitch meeting.
Help me help you. So, but what do people say after they lived in the house for 6 months? Have you talked to some of your past clients and said, what are they saying about this after it's done?
That it isn't something that they can live without, right? Like it's the new norm. It's back to ultimately what they were missing. On that point, there's circadian rhythm, which is sort of this wonderful thing to have, but it is quite expensive and it is a bit extreme, and that will come down in cost. And ultimately, I think every fixture of the future will have that technology. But in the meantime, at minimum, you can have something called warm dim. And so when you dim the lights, they at least warm up. So kind of back to that incandescent light bulb experience. It's just that when you have a circadian rhythm system, it's automatically doing the color changing as you turn on the lights based on what time of day it is. So that's a part of the cost. There's really kind of like one company that's figured that out. That's also part of the cost. So as that sort of evolves. But warm dim, like I would say 85% of our projects are getting warm dim fixtures. So, once it's experienced, it's like, yeah, we don't. I mean, unless they're like, look, I just the way my vision works or whatever, I don't like yellow light. That totally comes up, and that's a thing. But it's the majority of people do like to change the ambiance when they're dimming the lights.
Let's transition to the lighting here so that Jordan is happy. And tell us a little bit about these lights. When I first toured this with you, I think it was this last winter, and you were still remodeling the space. Let's talk a little bit about your journey here, but why don't we start a little bit with these lights? If I recall, are these laser lights? Is that what they're called?
So that's the name of them, which is kind of cool.
Such a
so
good-
they're
that's such a
literally
good
called
name.
laser lights.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would be sold on that. alone.
So it's a very specific LED strip. So everybody's familiar with LED strips, but there are good, better, best, and all sorts of things in between with LED strips. And so the LEDs are spaced so tightly that it just looks like one fluid light as it's shooting across. Like there's not anything covering it or diffusing it. And there's actually light shooting down and up. You can individually control the upper or the lower, and it does have the warm dim. So as we dim the space, it warms up, which is
cost
important.
effective because it's LED or no?
More cost effective in the sense of like it's energy efficient.
So no.
It's more cost effective than the sun.
Okay, so
They
it's
built
not.
the
That's
building
okay.
around these 6 lights. Tell us about, and we're going to have to go speed round here to respect our own timeline. Tell us a little bit about your investment here. And correct me if I'm wrong, just a quick, you came in as an investor to this space, right?
I did, yeah.
And then you just wanted your money to get invested and make a return, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And then a couple of the partners decided to hit the dusty trail. And now you are now saying, I have to fire the GC, I have to rewrite the contract, and now you're the GC, and now you have to take over this whole thing or the whole Titanic sinking?
Pretty much, yeah.
Sounds
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Yeah.
I am stressed.
Yeah, as you're locked in, the days of Groupon have left, right? We've gotten into it deeper. Yeah, so I knew some people involved, came in as an investor. We had a vision for this type of space, and this building was here, and wanted to evolve that. And so, I didn't think I'd be going back to school, but ultimately I went back to school. I went back to building a building school and starting a new business school and all sorts of stuff through the process, which has been a good journey and is positive and will be even more positive in the future. But ultimately, we had kind of some other people leading the charge with the business, some of the decisions that they were making with the builders, with the GC that we were using and how that was configured, and ultimately kind of how the business was actually going to operate was not set up for success. And so as that got figured out almost immediately, I stepped in and obviously know a few things about construction and that world. And again, just that drive to like, let's get it figured out. Let's solve a big problem. Let's get this thing opened and going. Because at this time, we're already starting to have bookings and we've got responsibilities of people that are planning events here. And we need to build this place now. And so I fired the GC. I brought in a good friend of mine that's from the commercial general contractor world. We finished building this place, and our first wedding was in March, and it was like, it's like we built this entire place for that wedding.
That's what I wanted you to tell us was your first wedding story, that like you basically were building this for one wedding that was booked.
Yeah, so I'm actually like at a wedding. This is like 4 months before the place opens up, so we're heavily into it. It's the middle of winter, so there's a lot of things up in the air based on like weather and what's going to happen on whether we can actually finish, right? Because we still have concrete that we need to pour for the sidewalks, and we need to address landscaping and a variety of things. Our first wedding reaches out to us and is like, hey, I was like tracking your guys' social media, and we're the first wedding. Like, we're not good with that. Like, we booked this like a year ago. Like,
Immediately start sweating. I'm sweating right now.
I'm thinking
my
like
palms are hot.
a builder, an architect, a designer. Like nobody wants to be like, the first house I've ever designed
Right.
is this house, right?
we're like,
oh shit.
yeah, it was oh shit. We're like, well, we're having a little industry event before yours, so it won't be the first event, but yes, it will be the first. And so it was like an immediate, like, all right, we gotta put this fire out. We put them, I put them at ease of like, look, we're gonna get it figured out. I promise it'll be built. I don't know how the landscaping will look. Like, I think it's going to look
There
pretty
may or
good.
may not be
but
grass,
yeah,
maybe.
but the landscaping, like, I'm not 100% sure.
How big was the wedding, out of curiosity?
It was one of our big boys. It was like a 260 person wedding.
My
Yeah.
God.
So big for us is 260, 275, 300. So it was up there. So like this hasn't been tested. Will the parking situation work? Will, like, do our toilets work? Does the kitchen work? Like, how are the caterers going to get in and out of here? Because we have this tiny elevator. And like,
Bride's dream come true is a row of porta potties.
Do the toilets flush? Check.
so it was a mad scramble. And I mean, on top of all of that, you have your licensing to like get occupancy, right? So it's not just, on the residential side, it's occupancy so people can move in. Here it's occupancy so we can have a party.
Staffing.
staffing,
And food and beverage and
all of it.
lighting and all
Everything.
of that.
Yeah.
And you have your
you've
hair.
never done it before.
You still have all your hair. I would have lost all of
lucky.
my hair.
Yeah. Chernobyl,
Yeah,
they
Chernobyl
couldn't
didn't
do
get it, neither did the
Comes
stress.
full circle.
That is some thick hair, man. We're all going to have a pull test at the end of this thing. Look at that thing.
Yeah. But the wedding happened. It went great. We learned some things. But like the clients had a fantastic time. It went awesome. It couldn't have gone better.
Amazing. And how many weddings since?
I think we've had 26-ish.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing.
Back up a second. Why are we getting in the wedding business exactly?
Yeah, in a post-COVID world, I mean,
Maybe I should have asked that question
Right.
first, but why the wedding business?
Well, it was the commercial real estate business with the venue business intact. It was during COVID, just like as COVID was kind of kicking off, is when this was like fully ramping up, and it was like, man, there's going to be some pent up demand. Let's jump on that. And so those were the perfect little things that lined up to kick it off into gear.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't buy office space in downtown Minneapolis.
co-working
Right.
space.
All those coworkers are going to head back there.
Yeah.
Such an opportunity as an entrepreneur to look at the pandemic and see it as an opportunity for the wedding industry. And I feel like there's event venues booked 3 years in advance now. So that's really awesome and exciting.
Yeah, it's great. Like we have bookings in 2025, which is just like, I couldn't plan that far in advance, but it's fun to see.
Speaking of wedding venues, I remember when it was my job to book our wedding venue, and I remember calling the place and asking, I'd be like, hey, is it available in October? And they said, what year? And that's when I knew I had a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
October
They
is a
laughed.
very
Yeah.
popular month.
Yeah, they laughed in your face and they said, good joke, sir.
It's a little bit like, I don't know how many people have small kids in here, but when you like go into a daycare, especially when it's your first kid and you know nothing about the daycare system, and you're like, 2 months before you're going to have your child, and you're like, I should probably figure out schooling. And they ask you the same question. I swear you have to know like if you're going to have a child before you get married. Same deal with the wedding venue. You got to
nuts.
plan out these
Nuts.
spaces for ages.
They'll be 12 by the time they can get into your daycare center. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how far in advance you have to plan.
Well, it's the same deal with the wedding. Out of curiosity, from a wedding standpoint, how many of the weddings, the 25 events you've had, how many of them are weddings versus, let's say, an event like this?
There's been 25 weddings, and then there's probably been like maybe 5 or 6 other style of events.
I need to get in the wedding venue business.
No more businesses.
Yeah, okay, agreed. Hey, aren't you stopped working for me in like December, so in January I can start a business without you telling me no?
That sounds about right. That's actually a good segue into another question that I had. Balance. You have multiple businesses. How do you balance, or is that just a farce that everyone claims that they have, and they really don't? They're just lying.
It's tricky.
Thank you.
Yeah. You have to try to balance. Like, you have to make an effort to do it, right? I've got an amazing wife and 2 little boys, and making time for them. Making time for Lelch, which is, needs as much time as I could remotely give it. Making time for the Lowlands, which needs epic amount of time as a new business to really, get going. So it's tough, but I think you just like every day you have to proactively like think about that and slot it in where you can.
Are there certain, this is a very interesting topic for me. I just love asking this to pretty much every guest on the podcast. And I think you're guest like 37 at this point. Exactly. So give me some knowledge here to fix my life. But how are you time blocking? Like, give us some, and there's a lot of business owners in the room, and we all struggle with similar things. Just what are some things that work for you
that have allowed you to create that space? I mean, you have two businesses. I mean, do you devote like certain days of the week to one business over the other? Is it like, how do you triage that?
Okay, good. All right, I feel much better.
Yes, this actually makes me feel really good. Okay, so it's a shit show for you too as well. Great, we're all a mess. Lovely.
No, I mean, it honestly, it really is like a balance, and it's something that I make an effort to do every single day. Like, I'm gonna be home to, see the kids and hang out with them. They're young still, so it's not like I have to get pulled off to bring them to sports and all of those other things. And I think that's one of those other elements that like I can kind of do this right now. And I probably couldn't do this a little bit later because it just becomes less and less feasible. Because I'm just kind of like, let's just go and figure it out. It makes it difficult for me to ultra plan and do time blocking and things like that. But attempts at that happen. I also do like a reset. So I'll like just take a random day off, or I'll take a random work from home day. Which is not something that I normally do. And that's really, really effective. Like if I'm like, get super overloaded because stuff stacks up and there's fires and you can't get through like some of the core stuff that your hat is that day because you're dealing with a bunch of other stuff, that reset at home can like get me caught up really, really fast. I can get like a week's worth of stuff done in like one day because it's laser focused. And then
how are you creating that space? Are you just canceling every meeting for that day? Or are you saying like, hey, once a month, I'm keeping one day dedicated to nobody can talk to me. I'm going into my bunker to do what I need to do.
It has started to get to a point where I'm like blocking a day off in order to not get meetings scheduled. Cause I've found that if I have like more than 3 meetings in a day, things start to get a little squirrely. After 5, like something's getting missed.
I mean, it's exhausting. 5 meetings a day sounds really, really exhausting. And you have a team of 38 people. And then how many people work at the Lowlands? What's the staff count?
So we have 2 full-time staff who are amazing and make all of this go. And then we have like 14, 15 part-time staff.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like a lot. Like, again, I'm sweating thinking about having to meet with all of those people.
Right.
Okay, the time blocking is something that, I mean, I utilize time blocking ineffectively.
Yeah.
How have you managed to make it work?
Time blocking, but I think he put it right. I think it's like, every couple of weeks I'll time block, but I reassess all the time. And I love this idea of resetting, whether it's monthly or quarterly, you take time to kind of reset to figure out if your schedule is actually working in the way that you set it. So I think intentionality is the piece.
I've always been impressed with, let's call it the creative types. So I think of architects, designers, things like that. I mean, you clearly have to have time set aside where they're just drafting and uninterrupted. And a couple of years ago, I was reading a book and it was basically turning off every single notification on my phone. So the only way to get a hold of me is call me. Shocking, a phone is for calling. And but it's like all the dinging your computers do, it's so distracting. But the reason I'm going back to that, creating that space, I feel like the creatives are very good at intentionally spacing out time. I feel like as a business owner, don't consider myself a creative in the sense of drawing and things like that. I'm sure I'm creative in other ways maybe, but like I feel like I could do a better job of taking that time to actually think. Because it's funny, I'll go for a run and my whatever will stop, and I'll have like 50 minutes, and it's like I'll start 5 businesses on this business run, which is a problem.
And I hear about all 5 of them, and I go, no.
Yeah.
So,
you don't want too much time for yourself.
Yeah, so it's a little dangerous, this time
Balance.
blocking. Yeah.
Balance.
Where do you see the future of the Lowlands? What excites you? I mean, is the other thing about having another business, and I can relate to this a little bit, just having, the Curious Builder podcast now for the last year, is like sometimes when you've had something for a long period of time, I mean, you obviously appreciate it and you love it, but it's really exciting to have another business. Mm-hmm. How are you, maybe it's a lure kind of wore off when half your partners left you holding a bag of coal to figure it out. But like, where are you at right now, and where do you see the next couple of years going with this business venture?
I think what's exciting about this is like I've been through and I'm in a journey with another business that's at different stages with different people, and things that work in that business don't work in this one. And when I've tried, it's like, oh, okay, well that doesn't go here. It's fun to see this like evolve and grow, and like next year we'll have twice as much business as the year before, right? And so that completely sort of changes the precedent of like what next year will be like and what we're able to do and how the place is staffed and the additional things that we can accomplish. And although this is new and finished, there's things that we want to do, and there's things that we want to evolve here. And just other sort of normal fundamentals of a business, marketing and and financials and all of those nuances that like need resources and need time and need money to do. And so just seeing the business sort of like go from this like can we open and like does this even like work, to like, okay, it works and like we're doing it, to like how do we do it better, how is it like now it's sustainable, and then evolving from there. So it's fun to see that journey for me. Like I think like I can't not have that. That's probably a part of why there's multiple businesses within Lelch, and all of those reasons all string together.
Yeah, and we're excited to be a part of the early stages. So we're happy that you were able to host us today. It's excited to kind of see you start your next venture. We'll see where you're at 20 years from now.
Yeah.
If you still have your hair, TBD.
Right, exactly.
My bet is he'll have hair. How come, and maybe it's just because I'm not really checking out wedding blogs on a regular basis, but how come wedding venues, you don't see them essentially franchising or having multiple venues? Am I wrong in that?
There is some of that. So in the marketplace, let's say maybe 10% of the venues are a part of sort of a block of multiples. So there's an element of that. I'm not sure yet. So it's one of the things that I'm still learning. We'll learn about the industry, because this is another industry that I fully didn't know or understand, and have had to, get through to get an understanding of it.
I love that you're surprised at what industries you join. This is really fun.
Like, oh, cool.
Look at what you do.
It reminds me a little bit, because like without everyone here tonight, this is just an empty industrial building, and as beautiful it is, it's a little bit like I always say the difference between a house and a home is you, meaning the client, right? Like we build beautiful homes, but without the people that embody them, it ends up, obviously it doesn't exist. And I think having people show up for events and feeling that it's not only a worthwhile endeavor to come out and give up one of their evenings to hear a story and to share together and to network, but also to have a really amazing place to do it in. It kind of makes me want to do this every single night. That wouldn't be feasible, obviously, but I see this and I'm like, man, why would you stop at one? Let's do like 10 of these things.
Monday through Wednesday, it's pretty open. And
Yeah, and then I say, no, we're not doing that.
That's a Tuesday, right? I kind of lost track what times. Well, let's move it on to the Q&A period of time. I'll walk around.
Do you want to walk around? You want to be the runner? Me the runner? Also, thank you for hosting us.
Yes,
and
of
thank
course.
you everyone
Absolutely.
for
Thank you all for
being here
coming.
tonight. There. After you do Q&A, can people walk around the space and see downstairs? Because downstairs has some really cool like greenhouse elements that people can look at.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So explore the whole space. So there's a terrarium downstairs. There's the Lady Slipper Lounge, which is our bar. A couple of hangout areas. There's a limestone wall that evolves and changes throughout the year, which is kind of cool. More laser lights. And then there's, the bar up here, so.
All right, does anyone have a question for Alex or any of us?
And if you want, I can run with the mic.
All right.
Without falling off the chair.
Hello, say this is a fabulous space. I promise I was listening, but what was this prior?
It was a metal factory for like 50 years.
Okay, thank you. So, Alex, this isn't a question, it's more of a comment. Your story is so inspirational, and I understand that you're not the only person in the room that has a similar story, in that you took a risk, you jumped on it, you figured out how to make it work. I just encourage you to take a story like what you shared today, spread it to the younger people that are out there, go to high schools, go to anywhere where you can make a connection with the younger people of the world and share a story like that, because I don't think they're getting enough of that right now. And your story is so incredibly inspirational. I think it just would play so incredibly well to those young minds, that let them know that, hey, you may not know what you want to do today, but you have a talent. Whatever that talent is, make it work. Go out there, put your story out there, and make it work. So.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Actually, on that topic, I've approached Minnesota, or Housing First Minnesota, as well as independently. There's a group of builders that we want to do speaking tours, something like that, not only to encourage the trades, but also to share stories like that. But we really need, because we don't need more businesses, we need a master event planner to help organize all this for us, because the people are pretty much every builder or every person that has a business is willing to share their stories. I think it's really a cohesive game plan on how to do it and the mechanisms to do it. Obviously, with social media and marketing, we can do it in our own way. But I mean,
Absolutely.
definitely in this industry, it's something that's near and dear to most people's hearts. So appreciate the question or statement.
All right, so given that you both have smaller companies, I'm sure that there's new roles that pop up all the time that you learn that you need to hire, and I'm sure you've experienced this growing your businesses. How do you handle onboarding with roles that you aren't familiar with, and how does that compare with existing roles that you have within your company?
A little trial and error is the typical approach, but something I think I haven't mentioned that, mentors have been a big component to the journey, right? And in the beginning, the mentor component was like, who is doing this at a better level than me? So I think the first thing was like, who has the coolest website installing TVs? And then I called that guy and was like, how'd you make the website? What'd you do, right? And then leveled up. But later on in business, it becomes those other things like, all right, we're having this struggle. What have you done in your business to evolve to that next thing? And then they start sharing X, Y, and Z. So you start to get little pathways. That's been my approach. I have a plethora of mentors and people that I respect, both within the industry, the industry I came to find out I was a part of, and outside of that industry. And that is a wealth of knowledge of how I typically go about that. Get as much knowledge as you can on something before going after it, and then figure it out.
Regarding onboarding, I think I do a terrible job. Jordan can attest to this.
Yeah, I'm laughing in the crowd. I'm now a part of the crowd.
Yeah. It is weird to see you out there. In the sense that I very much value the figure it out factor, so much so, and I don't know whether this is an excuse or a crutch, but it's my crutch, so I guess I'm going with it, is I kind of want to see if they can sink or swim. And so if they can make it, I've hired people that probably shouldn't have been in their role, but they had figure it out factor through the roof. And hats off to them for doing an amazing job. And sometimes I wonder if I'm a good leader. Sometimes I think I'm a really bad leader because I'm like, am I doing enough to, and one of the reasons I asked about time blocking is, I didn't get a chance to ask you, because I'll ask you now, is I don't know if I give my team enough of my time to coach them. And I think now that I'm running two businesses, I can see it in their eyes. Sometimes my people will say, we wish we had more time with you. And so to answer your question, Kyle, I do a pretty poor job of it. It's something I'm actively trying to work on and fix so that when we do hire people, there's a standard operating procedure, or there's also the idea that someday, personally, I would like to be able to sell the company, which is a tough thing to do for home builders. And so it's if I don't have documentation in place, it's going to be pretty hard, or a process in place, it's going to be hard to sell the company. And I've heard before that if you are working in your business, you have a job. And if you're working on your business, you have a business. And so I have a job, and I would like to create a business.
Yeah, and people say that, and it's really tough to delineate that and zoom yourself out of it. I think another approach that we take to that is when we're hiring 75% culture fit, 25% skill set, right? So ultimately, they'll figure out potentially kind of what they need to do, or the business will kind of guide that if the cultural fit component is there. The skill will evolve.
I keep saying it about culture is that we heard on the podcast, actually from Ed Engelbrich from Pella Windows, he said culture trumps strategy. And it seems like I've been seeing that over and over and over again, just how you hear about it all the time as a buzzword that culture is important. But man, if you get someone in the office that's it's cancerous. I mean, you got to get rid of it.
Yeah, you're taking many, many steps backwards very quickly.
So what advice do you have for somebody, starting a new business that's going from providing the service themselves to okay, we need to hire people? What does that look like early on as you're okay, I need to stop doing this myself and start implementing, employees or, 1099s or whatever? What advice do you have there, just from moving from doing it yourself to that? And what does that look like? Do prices have to immediately go up? Is that something that just will happen over time as you figure it out?
The approach that I took and the advice that I would give would be what do you like to do the most? and what do you like to do the least, right? I look at business in the sense of sort of three categories, right? There's sales, and there's a bunch of things that go underneath that, marketing, all sorts of things that are required in order for a sale to happen. There's operations, like how do you build the thing, make the thing, have the event, et cetera. And then there's finance, right? How do you get paid for it? And there's lots of businesses that can do one or two and can't do three, right? You could sell it, make it, and you forget to bill for it and go out of business, right? Or you can bill for it, but you can't sell it, doesn't matter, right? So figure out which one of those things you're best at or like to do the most, and then outsource the other piece. And to your question on whether you need to raise prices, maybe, but what you might also do is you'll just increase bandwidth, like you'll just have more business, and so now you can support staffing due to volume, not because you're charging more per. Eventually that all has to match out, and you need to figure out what margins are in your particular industry, trade, whatever, and just as a, I'm sure competitive, everybody is, right? You want to try to, win, right? And so keeping margin and all that.
We don't have enough time, I think, to talk about tonight because Jordan's an expert on it, but scaling. Scaling.
Like, what is he going to say next?
You're an expert on scaling. We didn't get to talk about that tonight. That's another podcast. But I'm not, again, another reason I'm not good at this is the scaling. I think I'm better at staying smaller and doing better work on a smaller scale than I am at getting big. However, if I'm going to tackle that problem personally, I'm probably going to go get the sale and then figure out how to support it on the back end. But part of it too with me is, if I'm building a large home, it might be 2 to 3 years. By the time I do a design retainer, we're working with architects, we're designing it. You might have 6 months to a year and a half in design. I have plenty of time to bring on someone, onboard them, or maybe I take a senior, depending on the projects. I don't know exactly which business of yours, because you have multiple businesses too, of which one you're talking about. Because I think if you have a shorter turn on that, you have to maybe have that process figured out a little sooner.
Only thing I will say quickly is there's a difference between growing and scaling, and people use them interchangeably. And as business owners, we think we have to scale, and that's not the only way you can grow. So just because you think you should have employees and grow to a certain dollar of revenue doesn't mean you should or that you want to. So look up the difference between scaling and growing, and you'll start to figure out, okay, how do I get there? And then it'll help you decide if you need to hire people, 1099ers, et cetera. But I think we use those two words interchangeably, and they have two different definitions.
Any other questions?
Mom, Dad, do you want to tell us if we did a good job? Or
All right, Andy in the back's got a question.
Today, I think when you look at what you invested in, what's important eventually for resale, this is really at both you guys today. You live in both worlds. We've done a lot of the obvious things like kitchens, bathrooms, exteriors, but what do you do in terms of kind of what you guys focus on? And Mark, what do you see in terms of trends that bring not just return on investment, but multiples to?
Wow, that's a loaded question. There's so many factors. Yeah, there's so many factors. Location, time. That's almost an impossible, that's a labyrinth question that no matter where I go, I could go somewhere else with it. I guess I would just tell my clients, I usually ask them whether they're building a new home or a remodel, how long are you planning on living in the home? Is it, over or under 8 years? And the reason I say that is if they're going to stay long-term, no one can predict the future a year from now, much less 2. Good luck 8. But the point is you're going to see some stabilization of prices as well once you think a little bit long-term. But, build the home for you. Remodel the home for you. I'm not a big fan of it's a little bit different if you're talking about investment properties. I'm not a good person to ask. It's probably why I'm not a great spec home builder. I'm not good at predicting what the market will do. I'm much better at working for Joshua and building him an awesome house for him, understanding, hey, you're welcome, buddy. I would love to work together on your home. We haven't tried that one yet. And so I just think that it just depends on what you're trying to get. Real estate investment would probably be, Alex would have better ideas on commercial spaces, and I think seeing opportunities. But at the end of the day, if you're spending it on your own home and investing on where you think, do it in the places that you enjoy the most. And guess what? You're probably likely to, the person who buys your home is probably going to like what you like too.
Lelch provides, lifestyle and amenities, right? And so I think what we bring to a home is elevating the experience of being in your home through amenities and through conveniences. I think the desire for that is growing and evolving. There's more of it. It's being asked for in more places. It's less of like, this is the Jetsons and we can't dream of having this, and more like this is the norm, especially like technology, et cetera. I would say one thing that you could do is invest in the home's infrastructure, right? So having a proper Wi-Fi network throughout the home is like this critical thing that like your modern home can't function if you don't have the Wi-Fi properly set up. So if a new home is being built and it's not being wired out for proper infrastructure, that's the same thing as not wiring it, plumbing it all the way through or running electrical all the way through. It's a fundamental core component, right? I mean, in the modern space. And so I think, that's probably the best thing from a value standpoint.
We have time for 2 more questions. Yes, sir. Perfection Heating and Cooling over here. Oh, nope. We're going over here first.
So we're in the HVAC market, and technology's growing fast. Heat pumps, mini splits, and I'm really good at selling high-tech stuff and not telling my guys how to put it in. And they show up on the job site, and they have been trained properly. How do you handle new technology that you're offering? How do you translate, or how do you train your guys ahead of time? Or do you run into the same issue we have where guys get intimidated by a new product and they're not confident putting it in?
So we're technologists by nature, and so it's a part of kind of our ethos in general. So new tech is sort of a positive thing in our world, and so it's a little bit easier for our team to sort of take that on. But that doesn't solve the problem of like, we still need to be able to physically install it and program it and make it work and all of those things. And so even though they're excited about it, it doesn't magically just happen. So our approach is typically we sort of have somebody that like is the champion of that particular, new vertical that we're doing or new potential technology. And we have them sort of deep dive it, go through whatever training's available, be sort of the lead person to take it on and champion it, and then sort of teach the rest of the team. And then eventually you kind of have your key person, you have a few people that kind of know how to do it, and then it's easier to get it through the rest of the team. That's our typical approach.
All right. I have a question on pricing. So I'd be curious for both of your takes as you grow and develop your business. How do you think of pricing and charging for the value that you bring to the market as you go across that journey? So you're providing great service, you're trying to scale the business. How does pricing fit into that mix?
So I think so what we charge, for example, per hour for our labor isn't really all that vastly different, right? Like the market sets what that is. We can deviate that a little bit, but that's basically set by the market. The things that we can charge for that we can't charge for earlier on in our journey are things like design and things like engineering and things like project management. These other value components that we bring into the project that A, we weren't able to provide before, and B, because we provide them, we provide an elevated experience to the customer compared to a company that doesn't offer that. And so those are sort of the ways that we address the pricing thing, if you will.
Wow, this is a tough one too. I feel like I've probably undercharged my entire career. Even right now, I'm probably undercharging, but what does that mean? And I think I just heard something recently that I really liked where, I forget the analogy completely, but basically there was something broke on this engine. It was this aircraft carrier, let's call it, $10 billion. And this engineer comes in, takes the hammer, no one could figure it out, knocked it, and he sent him a bill for $10,000. And like, well, you did this in 10 minutes. And he goes, it was a $10 hammer. He goes, yep. You spent $10 on the hammer and 900 or whatever the balance is to get to 10,000 on the knowledge. I think you accumulate all this knowledge and all these people that have the knowledge. I think I need to do a better job of, whether it's your designers, your architects, your trade partners, of really celebrating that to the client and saying, you're not just, and everyone's at a different segment. We built high-end custom homes. And so, those homes aren't necessarily approachable for every person on various scales, but it's really illustrating to them, why is that knowledge important? What can we do? And ultimately, it's a journey, it's an experience. There's a reason why people keep coming back, or why you have, 200, 4.5-star ratings, is because they're treating them well on service. And so I think if you can demonstrate to your clients that you have, their genuine best interest, but you also, I think if you demonstrate that you love your craft, I think that comes out in a variety of ways. And I don't know if I've completely answered your question, other than it's kind of a moving target, and a lot of it depends on what your consumer values. Because I have some clients that don't value the things that I do. Those are the hardest ones to sell to, not to sell to, but to like really show them your value, because they don't appreciate the same things. And so I try not to make it about price. I try to make it about value. And if I understand the client and what their goals are, I can just tell them, well, this is what kind of experience do you want? And so it's really more educating them, and it's something I can always do a better job of.
Dmitry from Elegance Custom Cabinetry. I have a question for you. You have 30 people working for you, and I want understanding your mindset. It was a transaction from 5, 10. I mean, did you feel the difference? And you feel like, let's say you're going to have even 50 or 100. You think it's going to be a different mindset?
Do you mean like my personal mindset, or the mindset cadence
particularly
of the business?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Particular for you, personal,
Yeah.
Did it change your mindset, thinking to have a 5, 10 people, 30 people, and it was a changing in that transaction, or it was just doesn't matter? I mean, let's say tomorrow is going to be another 10 people, and you're like, oh.
I wish it was that easy. Yeah. They're completely different businesses. There's certain milestones that you hit. They typically come with revenue, and along with revenue, people, because you need to support the revenue and so on and so forth. But the business, and thus my mindset, has changed probably 3 significant times, and like completely shifted. Like who Lelch was with 5 people is a completely different business than it was at 15 and that it was at 30. Like everything about the business is different. There's core components, obviously, that are the same, and we're still doing the same things, but how the business operates, the level of process, the level of communication and interconnectivity in the organization has to elevate. You just can't, if you run the same way you ran with 5 people when you have 15, you're just going to have mad chaos.
Well, thank you very much for everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. And let's give a final hand to Alex. And Anthony. As a thank you for everyone that's come, I think later on this week, we won't put too much pressure on Chelsea, our videographer, photographer, but everyone on the email list will be sending you digital assets of the entire evening. There's tons of photos of you guys. You guys are welcome to use them however you want. Social, post, tag us, don't tag us, whatever you want. It's just fine as a thank you. Additionally, there are 4 hidden surprises somewhere in the audience. If you would check under your seat, you're looking for a winner sticker.
Is it a car?
Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at curiousbuilderpodcast.com.